One of the things that is part of your new book that will be coming out in January, but it's part of the Republican strategy and toolkit, is stoking that paranoia. Right? Is stoking the paranoia and feeding into the fear. And what we considered, and again, I fault the media for this, because back when the Tea Party first came up, we said, oh no, that's fringe, right? This is the fringe. And they love to make this very clear distinction between normal Republicans and then the Tea Party fringe, right? And then now we fast forward and the Trump administration wants to make a similar comparison between those that were, team sane and team insane. But the reality is that apart, if not for paranoia, if not for fear, they actually would lose one of their biggest tools in their toolkit. And so, Jared, the question that I have for you is, if we know that, as we're all nodding here, and we know that to be true, what is it about Democrats, or those of us who are actually living on Earth One and believe Earth One, how is it that we then are able to articulate the seriousness of what's going on and saying, because I said this today, I was just like, Republicans hate Americans. If you actually look at the way, it's not that they just hate Black and brown people. That's a given. But they actually hate Americans. They don't think that you're worthy, right, of having lower drug costs, of having good schools, of having clean air. Everything is always about this story of somebody getting over on Uncle Sam, right, which is so far from the truth. And so I just ask, how do you write, we all write here. You guys are actual public, brilliant authors, right? But how do you message this in a way that people understand that they are being played? They are being played.
Well, a large part of it. So I always hate this. It sounds like, I'm just a simple, unfrozen caveman lawyer.
I'm just an unsimple, unfrozen caveman lawyer. I just write books. My name is Jared Sexton.
I come from a really, really poor red state, Indiana factory mining family. Those are my people. Those are the people that, when I go back home, I'm talking to, I'm getting information from going back.
Real America.
Real America, exactly. And one of the things I'll tell you is this. When you actually talk to them about politics and you're not just trading slogans, they understand it's all bullshit. And I'm talking about people who wear a Trump hat every single day and still have Trump 2020 signs out in their yards. If I'm sitting there and I'm like, let's go, Brandon, yeah, let's go. And they're sitting there and they're throwing out Trump slogans or whatever. We don't actually talk about anything, right? We're just trading sort of identities at this point. They do understand that the real problem in this country is a top-down situation. That the people at the top are trying to take their money, they're trying to actually make their lives worse. They get all of that. And one of the problems that the Democratic Party often falls to, and a large part of this is because the Democratic Party's base is largely college educated, and it largely comes from the professional managerial class. A lot of the time, the Democratic Party gets completely stuck thinking that they live in an Aaron Sorkin universe. And if they give the right speech...
I like that universe, Jared.
I do too.
Walk and talk.
I love it. And there's something wonderful about it. And a large part of it is because it does portray politics the way that we think it should be, right? The idea that you'll appeal to people's consciences. And in a way, a large part of the problem here is that the Democratic Party at this point, the only identity it has is as a protector of institutions. We have to protect the filibuster. We have to do this. The Supreme Court might have been stolen, but we have to treat it with respect. The Democratic Party, that's not its roots. I mean, well, the Democratic Party has roots within slavery, but, in terms of the 20th century, the Democratic Party got its base from working people, vulnerable communities, and it created a coalition that was talking about trying to change the world and make it at least a little bit more equitable. The problem here is that the Republican Party right now is the only party that's actually offering change. And that right now has been monopolized by them. They're offering the wrong change. But there is a problem with our institutions. Everybody knows it. Everybody understands it. And to make this very clear for anyone who doesn't know it already, the This country was founded by white supremacist, wealthy, slave-holding men who created, by the way, a one-party system. They were not interested in having multi-parties. They wanted to control it among a very small financial elite. They went ahead and they said that slaves weren't people, obviously, that women didn't deserve a vote, poor people didn't deserve a vote. They created the institutions in order to contain that power. We have to start wrestling with how our institutions are doing what they're supposed to do. That's the issue here, is that it is meant to oppress and it is supposed to go ahead and dominate. And the Democratic Party has to start pulling that back a little bit.
But, they were nice slave owners. I mean, they treated them well. The slaves were well.
That was a hell of a story that they told. That is true.
Yeah.
But all of this comes to a head with this one example, right? There's a reason why this story is not being told. There's a reason why this story of America is so threatening to the point now where school boards are being attacked. There's a reason why books are being banned. There's a reason why CRT is the boogeyman. And the way this place is, where this has always come to a head historically, and I want you to expound on this, because you and Danielle are both educators. And I feel like education is this one battleground that really kickstarted this new culture war, right? Ever since 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, where the Supreme Court said that segregation is unconstitutional. That was the genesis of the modern culture war, not Roe v. Wade, which then came on in the 70s with the rise of feminism. It's always been schools. And, we were talking right before the recording about this latest horrific news that teachers are just tapping out because they're like, F this, I can't get paid enough, it's not worth it. School boards are like asking Merrick Garland to protect them from intimidation. Books are being banned. Betsy DeVos, just a couple of weeks ago, who used to be Trump's Secretary of Education, said, I think the Department of Education should be canceled and killed. And she also said public schools are a dead end. The intersection of what you've been talking about, white supremacy, big money, the attack on democracy, and religious extremism. How is that playing out, Jared, in the public school system? Or rather, I should say the attack on public schools.
Well, this has been just an absolute attack for decades at this point. I always say this every time I'm on a podcast. Everyone, if you have some time in the next couple of days, go and look at the Powell memo. Just Google it, Powell memo, go look at it. And basically what happened was after the 1960s, which is around the time where all of a sudden public education started changing a little bit, right? All of a sudden we started talking about how our institutions were created in order to protect power and expand power. All of a sudden, I'm telling you, the wealthiest people in the country lost their minds. And they're like, they looked around the 60s and 70s with the counterculture and civil rights, and they said, we have to do something about this. And so what did they do? And to go back to the climate change problem, they learned from fossil fuel companies that knew that climate change was real going back into the 1950s. And what did they do? The same thing that they learned from the tobacco companies, which was lie and create a completely alternate reality with alternate quote unquote experts and alternate quote unquote educators. And they created an environment that was conducive to what they wanted. And everybody likes to talk about, we're in a post-truth moment. That's where it started. And it was an intentional plan. So what has happened to public education? One, it's been completely starved of resources. And that wasn't on accident. That was an all-out attack that basically wanted to create a small, manageable part. They've went after unions every chance they had. They vilified educators every time they had, treated them like elitists. And by the way, they took advantage of the fact that a lot of people couldn't afford to go to school and they resented it. I actually think one of the biggest problems in America right now is the resentment over higher education. The idea that some people can't go, some people can. It's now required in this new economy, yada, yada, yada. But they've gone after it relentlessly. And if you look at history, anytime that an authoritarian movement takes over a situation and oppresses it, the first thing that they do is they go after education. They vilify them, and then they go ahead and they make teachers so scared that they either leave the profession and or they're like, fine, leave me alone. I'll teach whatever you want. And that, by the way, has been the case throughout history. I'm talking about post-Napoleon oppression. I'm talking about in fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, you name it. In every case,
right now in Hungary.
Yeah, exactly. You take over education and basically you say, you know what? People can't understand what's going on. If they understand what's going on, they're going to do something
about it. Yeah,
exactly.
I have said for the longest time that our public education system is the biggest tool and proponent of white supremacy.
Absolutely.
Without it, you would never have a class of, you need, right, in this capitalistic hierarchical system, you need an underclass. How do you create a permanent underclass, right? You miseducate or undereducate them.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing, and going back to the question you asked previously, which is how do you talk to people about this? Here's one way that you can actually talk to people in red state America. And it's this. If you go ahead and you say, on one hand, you can say, oh, QAnon's not real, CRT is not real, grooming's not real. That doesn't do it. That's a slogan, right? You're battling over headlines at that point. Here's what they need to understand. QAnon, CRT, this grooming stuff, it's all being used to capture these schools and areas. And why is it being done? Because they want to create what you were just saying, an underclass. They want to create, and by the way, this is a large reason why Roe v. Wade was done away with.
Yep.
They want more workers. And not only more workers, they want more workers that they don't have to pay a lot. And so as a result, they're going after organized labor. They're making sure that they don't know anything. They're basically handing public education over to private interests, not just in the interest of trillions of dollars worth of profit, but also going ahead and creating precarity for people where they won't be able to leave their jobs. Why? Because I got educated at Microsoft High School. And as a result, the only thing that I could possibly ever do is work for this corporation. And this is one more thing I want to hit on before we're done. We are going to reindustrialize America. That's where we're going with all this. That's what the Republican Party wants to do at this point. They want to bring factories back, and they want to basically rewind globalism and go ahead and pay people nothing. They want to get rid of minimum wage. They want to get rid of regulations. They want to bring back child labor. And here's the thing. If you go and you talk to people in the reddest of red states of America, they know this. They understand it, and they're ready to talk about it, but no one's talking to them about it right now. It's simply going over their heads, talking about slogans that they also know are BS.